It looks like it is.
I think it is.
There you go. Good morning, all. I'm Felicia Marcus, Chair of the Board, and today is Tuesday, May 15th at 9:32 a.m., and the meeting is called to order. With me to my left is Vice Chair Steve Moore. To his left, Board Member Didi D'Adamo, and to my right, Board Member Joaquin Esquivel, and I believe we'll be joined shortly by Board Member Tam Dodak, or else that water bottle would not be there, right? So that's deductive reasoning, right? Or inductive reasoning. Mr. Oppenheimer, will you introduce the staff that are assisting us today?
Sure. Good morning. To my left, Chief Counsel Michael Laufer. To my right, Clerk to the Board Janine Townsend.
Emergency evacuation procedure for anyone who may not know it. Please look for the exit nearest you, and if you're an emergency sound, of course, go out the exit and out down the stairs. We meet at the corner of 10th and J to wait for the all clear if you want to wait with us. If you need assistance, someone will help you to a protected area, which they have on every floor if you can't get down the stairs. The meeting is being webcast and recorded, so it's very important that you speak into the microphone when you come up. We can hear you without it, but we want to make sure that it's on the recording and that people who are listening over the webcast can hear. And then, of course, especially with Board Member Dodak in the room, please make sure that all of your sound-making devices are set to non-sound. Okay, with that, we're on to the public forum session of the agenda, and that's the part where we hear from anyone who wants to talk about something that is not pending before the board on the agenda today, and we have two. All right, so first we have Kirk Cloyd from Hidden Valley Lake CSD, followed by Bob Gore of the Gualco Group. Mr. Cloyd, hi.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me a few moments of your time. My name is Kirk Cloyd. I'm the General Manager of Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District, Lake County, just a little bit north and west of here. Just want to take a few moments of your time. On April 4th of this year, the board received a certified letter from our district, and that letter is dated March 26, 2018. It states, Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District received compliance order number 0203-14R-004 on October 17, 2014 from the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water. This compliance order stated that the district violated Section 116555 of the California Health Safety Code. This section requires each public water system to have a reliable water source of water to serve to its customers. The compliance order states that because, and this is a quote, because the drought conditions and senior water rights demand, the Water Board Division of Water Rights determined that the water was not available for the Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District public water systems Grange well sources, and notified Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District of the need to curtail its diversions. For this reason, the Division of Drinking Water has made the determination that Hidden Valley Lake Community Services District is not able to meet the requirements of that section. The compliance order concludes by stating that this order does not require you to cease using sources that have been curtailed to provide for basic health and safety needs of your current customers, but does require that you take specific steps in the interim to prevent new source connections and to secure a reliable long-term water supply. Successful implementation of the directives contained within the order will ensure compliance with California Safe Drinking Water Act as well as the state water systems. Noting that one of the leading factors stated was that for the compliance order is that because of drought conditions, it is noted that the governor of California removed those conditions in 2017. Therefore, the district is asking that the State Water Resources Control Board Division of Drinking Water would actually consider or reconsider this compliance order. The district believes that additional consideration should be given, noting that the community of Hidden Valley Lake Community Services, or Hidden Valley Lake, is the primary water user within the district. Hidden Valley Lake is a planned community that was adopted in the late 1960s. At that time, all parcels within Hidden Valley Lake were approved for construction as it was determined that there was sufficient water for build-out. It has been determined since then that there are parcels included in that determination which are not suitable for construction due to natural streams that flow through them or the topography. They're actually on cliffs. Can't build on them. This has actually reduced the original demand on the water system that was already approved for this community. A byproduct of this plan community is that the developer built a dam which created Hidden Valley Lake, allowing for the water from Coyote Creek to actually percolate into the Coyote Valley groundwater basin rather than simply run off. Additionally, the district has over 20 years of groundwater monitoring, which includes most recent 6 years of drought. This data shows that the groundwater within Coyote Valley Basin has not dropped significantly even during the recognized drought years. Further, all 20 years of the data indicate that every year the natural stormwater flows of the surrounding mountains refill the Coyote Valley Basin and excess flows actually flow down Puda Creek into Lake Berryessa. This is supported by USGS data from the Gwinnett Gauging Station, as well as more than 20 years of water master reports born from the Upper Puda Creek adjudication in 1996. To further confirm the annual recharge of aquifer, Solano County Water Agency, who oversees Lake Berryessa, has stated their willingness to file a letter of support for the district to discontinue the annual supplemental water flows down Puda Creek from July 15th through October 31st of each year. Discontinuing the unnatural exportation of this viable resource from the native groundwater basin and allowing the natural flow of the water to return to Puda Creek would not only further strengthen the resiliency of the groundwater basin, but also would benefit the environment. The current mandate discharge promotes the red-legged frog, who actually feeds on the tadpoles of the juvenile foothill yellow-legged frog, which is actually an endangered species. So in short, the state's mandate exportation of water resources may actually be adding to the demise of the foothill yellow-legged frog. Finally, the district is 100% self-sustaining in that all water pumped from Coyote Valley Basin through the 3 domestic wells is treated, stored, and distributed to its customers within the Coyote Valley Basin. Therefore, if customers were to use water on their landscape or garden, that water is returned to Coyote Valley Basin. Similarly, all remaining water is discharged into the wastewater.
You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Into the wastewater collection system owned and operated by our district. Once collected, the wastewater is transported to the Grange wastewater treatment plant, where it is treated to the tertiary level. From the treatment plant, 100% of the tertiary water is treated and is provided to the local golf course, where 100% of that is returned to the basin through the golf course. In closing, our district provides water to an approved planned community whose groundwater aquifer is recharged annually even during extreme drought years, providing a reliable supply of water to serve our customers. We have a very unusual basin, and we acknowledge that. 100% of the water that we use is actually returned to the basin as well. And with that, the district notes that Coyote Valley Basin groundwater monitoring reports, Upper Puda Creek watershed water master reports, and the habitat assessment reports in this letter are actually on file and available for review. The district believes that this issue to be of mutual interest to the State Water Board, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, we're out of the Santa Rosa office, Hidden Valley Lake Community Service District, Hidden Valley Lake Association, some of the local realtors and developers. I know that the board's really busy, and what we do ask is that you please consider giving this some consideration and possibly passing it on to our regional board. The regional board is very familiar with this issue, and we are looking at a lot of the North Bay fires. A lot of people are trying to rebuild and can't. We are in the south end of Lake County, and they've expressed a desire to come up there to rebuild so they can still keep their jobs and commute. We had the Valley Fire, the Sulphur Fire this year, and the Tubbs Fire. Prior to that, we had the Jerusalem and the Rocky Fire. So we're looking at ways to continue to keep this area to grow and actually rebuild. So I know you guys can't comment on this, but we do ask that you possibly give this to Sherry Miller at the regional board. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for coming. Obviously, there was a very fruitful collaboration between the Drinking Water Division and the Water Rights Division in 2014 and came up with a solution that would not have us just curtailing all your water based on water rights. And it's interesting to hear all the detail where it was very technical. It is something that DDW and the Water Rights Division need to decide, but they can certainly consult with the regional board, but they can't give it to the regional board. And you've got a bunch of folks here from water rights, including some new folks from water rights in the room. This is just a perfect puzzle for all of you. So my suggestion, thank you for flagging it for us. We'll absolutely look into it. And I suggest somebody, I want to volunteer. Okay, at the back you have the new director of the Water Rights Division, Eric Ektal. So if you could make his acquaintance, we'll get follow-up going, and he'll bring in the DDW people as well.
Thank you for your time. You guys have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful
Nice
week.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Cool. Roar.
Chair Marcus, board members, good morning, and I have a bit of a puzzle as well.
It's puzzle
and-
morning.
And Mr. Ekdahl, oops, he's leaving, oh well.
There's more, but there's more.
There's more people here,
Yeah.
it looks that way.
There are others. It's a deep bench over there.
Thankfully for us, yes. About 10 years ago, when a recession rolled into a depression, I worked for the former governor, and it was one of my unfortunate responsibilities to make budget cuts that began as devastating and became draconian. I can recall the HHS secretary at the time sitting in my office saying, these are her exact words, "Bob, who are we going to kill today?"
Ooh.
It was a tough time. One of the budget reductions, as you recall, was the Water Rights Fund, which was rolled back from general fund all on fee payers. And this morning, by the way, I neglected to mention, I'm Robert Gore from the Gualco Group, and I'm here today on behalf of a bunch of advanced thinking farmers, the California Association of Wine Grape Growers, and California's largest private water right holder, the Kings River Water Association. When we rolled back the Water Rights Fund, it was our intent that it be focused tightly on programs that were directly related to water rights fee payers. In 2014, the people in this room, including myself, agreed to create a fee payers stakeholders process for water rights, water quality. It has worked very well. It is transparent, it is collaborative, staff is great, right up until Friday, when a $2 million BCP rolled out that we had no awareness of, weren't briefed on, didn't contribute to for the Office of Administrative Hearings paid for out of the Water Rights Fund. It is our hope in the hours we have left, because this is scheduled tomorrow before the Senate and Assembly budget subcommittees, that we can better understand this BCP and perhaps restructure it so that it circles back to the general fund, which is now much healthier. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll figure out appropriate ways to talk. We can't, obviously. It's not our, right. I know we'll be talking a lot about it in the weeks and months to come. All right. Now I have item number one, the board minutes. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any additions or corrections? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number two, current hydrologic conditions. It's hydrologic, not hydrological, right? Hydrologic. Yeah, I like hydrology update. That's easier.
Good morning, board members. Everyone, my name is Chris Kwan. To my left is Vadim Demchuk, Division of Water Rights, presenting item number two, the hydrology update to the Bay Delta watershed. As of last Friday, the precipitation index for the Northern Sierra is at 38.8. For this date, it is 81% of average, dropping 1% from 2 weeks ago. For the San Joaquin Basin, the precipitation index is 29.4. This is 79% of average for the state, dropping 2% from 2 weeks ago. Tulare Basin, precipitation index at 17.4. This is 65% of average for the state, dropping 1% from 2 weeks ago. Sorry. Snow water content in the north is at 10. This is 18% of average for the state, dropping 12% from 2 weeks ago. In the central, it is at 22% of average for the state, dropping 22% from 2 weeks ago. And in the south, it is at 16% of average for the state, dropping 15% from 2 weeks ago. Statewide, snow water content is 20% of average for the state, dropping 17% from 2 weeks ago. For our reservoirs, Trinity is at 86% of historical average, Oroville 85% of historical average, Castaic Lake 99% of historical average, Lake Paris 91% of historical average, San Luis at 95% of historical average. All other reservoirs on this map is at 100% or above historical average. For Kachuma Reservoir, it is at 38% of capacity and 45% of historical average. The two upstream reservoirs of Kachuma are doing a little bit better than Kachuma itself. Gibraltar is at 98% of capacity, and Jameson is at 63% of capacity. Next, we have here reservoir storage over the last 35 years in Kachuma. As you can see, in 2016, 2017, before the wet water year, it was at record lows of about 8% capacity. And after the wet water year, it improved up to around 50% of capacity. So it had a big hole to dig out of. Rainfall for the Kachuma area in the last 5 decades, 6 decades, even though most of the state experienced record rainfall in 2017, Kachuma area was far from record rainfall. It was about 6 inches only above average in rainfall inches. And we think because the reservoir itself, Kachuma itself, had such a big hole to dig out of, even lots of rain from last year, it only improved up to 50%. We didn't notice any operational changes or structural changes that could have affected Kachuma as much as that big hole before 2017.
Thank you for adding that. All
Of course.
those slides. It's helpful.
For Diamond Valley, it is 89% of capacity, no change from 2 weeks ago. San Luis is about 84% of capacity, about 100% of historical average. And CVP allocations north of the Delta, in the Delta, increased to 100% as of April, and it increased from 20% to 40% south of the Delta in April. For drought conditions throughout the state, about 66% of the state is in dry or drought conditions, no change from 2 weeks ago. Imperial County is still in extreme drought conditions. For temperature predictions next week, Southern California, chances of being a little bit cooler than normal, and for Northern California, about normal temperatures next week. Precipitation, about normal next week. Maybe a little bit of precipitation in the Sierras next week.
But normal's not much.
Yes, that's right. Normal of average, normal of this time of the year, yes. Now we're moving on to Colorado. Snow water content. Snow water equivalent for the Colorado Basin area. As you can see in red, a lot of the area is below the median of 50%. And they are in dry conditions, some of the driest conditions since 2002.
That's a great map. Thank you. Haven't seen that one.
Sorry. And the drought conditions for Colorado, much of the state, about 95% of the state is in dry or drought conditions, with the most driest conditions in the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. With that, we'll end our presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you.
I just appreciate the follow-up on our questions about the Kachuma area and a good explanation of, but important to see just actual numbers. And those upstream reservoirs are only about 1/10 of the capacity or less, so they don't make a huge dent. But your point was well taken about the antecedent, or what happened before the 2017 average rainfall was several years, if you look at that pattern, which would affect watershed soil moisture, the depth to groundwater, shallow groundwater, which affects the hydrology and runoff. So there's a good explanation why that area of the state is so exceptional in terms of trying to recover from the drought conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. It was good for us to kind of look at all sides and all perspectives, make sure we captured everything, captured most of the story, and it did have to endure many years of drought, and it was slowly dwindling throughout the drought years.
Other questions? Oh, thank you. Thanks for adding the Colorado stuff too. Just helpful. All right. Item number 3. We have presentation, draft order.
Thank you, Chair Marcus. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Mara Irby. I'm an environmental scientist with the Division of Water Rights Hearings Unit. With me today, to my right, is Michael Buckman, Chief of the Hearings Unit, and to my left is Nicole Kinsey of the Office of Chief Counsel. Agenda item number 3 is consideration for adoption of the April 3rd, 2018 draft order, which issues a cease and desist order and imposes administrative civil liability against the Stornetta Family Trust and Newton Dalpagetto in his capacity as trustee. The draft order concerns the unauthorized diversion and use of water from an unnamed stream in Napa County, tributary to the Napa River, and failure to timely file a statement of water diversion and use. Collectively, the trust and trustee are referred to in this presentation as Stornetta. To begin, I'll briefly describe the origin of this enforcement action. The investigation that led to the enforcement action was born out of Assembly Bill 2121, which was signed into law by Governor Schwarzenegger in 2004. The law required the State Water Board to adopt principles and guidelines for maintaining in-stream flows in Northern California coastal streams. As a result, the board developed the policy for maintaining in-stream flows in Northern California coastal streams, which I will refer to in this presentation as the policy. The intent of the policy is to protect native fish particularly anadromous salmonids and their habitat. The geographic scope of the policy, shown on the left of the slide, extends to 5 counties: Marin, Sonoma, and portions of Napa, Mendocino, and Humboldt counties, called the policy area. During the development of the policy, potentially unauthorized on-stream dams in the policy area were identified due to their ability to negatively impact native fish. An on-stream dam is a structure in a stream channel that impedes or blocks the passage of water, sediment, woody debris, or fish. On-stream dams can directly impact salmonids if they prevent fish passage and block access to upstream spawning and rearing habitats. On-stream dams can also intercept and retain spring and summer flows without providing bypass flows, sediments and gravels that would otherwise replenish downstream spawning gravels, and large wood that would otherwise provide downstream habitat structure. They also can create slow-moving lake-like habitats that can favor non-native species that otherwise prey on anadromous salmonids or compete for food and shelter. In addition, unauthorized dams may cause injury to legal water users. During the effort, 1,771 potentially unauthorized dams in the policy area were identified. One of these is the Stornetta property, shown on the right-hand side of the slide. Division of Water Rights Enforcement staff closed over 1,200 of these cases due to dams either having an existing basis of right or falling outside of the board's permitting authority. To bring the remaining potentially unauthorized dams into compliance, enforcement staff sent letters to approximately 350 landowners in the policy area in 2011. The letters notified these landowners of the need for a water right, the State Water Board's authority to impose civil liability for unauthorized diversions, water use reporting requirements, and gave landowners an opportunity to provide information concerning the basis of right for the reservoir or to submit a corrective action plan. 11 landowners, including Stornetta, did not reply or did not reply adequately to the notification. As a result, in 2012, enforcement staff sent cease and desist orders and administrative civil liability complaints to each of them. Of these, 7 landowners reached a settlement agreement with enforcement staff. 1 had their complaint withdrawn, 1 received a default judgment, and 1, Robert Mann, who we'll discuss again in a moment, went to hearing and had a cease and desist order and administrative civil liability issued by the board. Stornetta is the last of these 11 enforcement matters that remains unresolved. On October 16th, 2013, enforcement staff conducted an on-site inspection of the Stornetta Reservoir. This is a composite image that was taken during that site visit. The dam is located along the right-hand side of the image, and the inflow into the reservoir is at the top of the image around the bend. In response to the enforcement action from the division, Stornetta requested a hearing. The hearing was held on September 2nd, 2014, with 2 parties, Stornetta and the Division of Water Rights prosecution team. A draft order based on the evidence in the hearing record was released for public comment on April 3rd, 2018. The board received 2 comment letters by the May 4th, 2018 deadline, 1 from Stornetta and 1 from the prosecution team. Stornetta requested that the $75,000 administrative civil liability proposed by the draft order be reduced for reasons not included in the hearing record. As I will explain in further detail in a moment, the proposed administrative civil liability in this case would be imposed in a stepwise fashion if adopted. Therefore, if Stornetta timely complies with the requirements of the cease and desist order, the liability would be limited to $30,000. In the prosecution team's comment letter, they requested clarification as to whether days of impoundment only, meaning days that water is sitting in storage but not being used, in addition to days of active diversion to storage and use, should be included when calculating days of violation under Water Code Section 1052. The prosecution team raised a public policy concern that if continued impoundment were not considered as a day of violation, it would incentivize diverters to store as much water as possible in the fewest number of days in order to limit their potential liability. Water Code Section 1052 states, "The diversion or use of water subject to this division, other than as authorized in this division, is a trespass." The term diversion, as it is used in the Water Code, refers to active diversion and does not include water that is only being retained in storage. However, the length of time that water is stored pursuant to an unauthorized diversion can be a factor in setting the amount of liability within the maximum liability amount. In the comment letter, the prosecution team references that they believe that the draft order is inconsistent with on this issue with Water Right Order 2015-25, which imposes administrative civil liability against Robert Mann, who I mentioned a minute ago. In the Mann order, the differentiation between active diversion, use, and days where water is only sitting in storage is not clear. Adding this clarification, however, would not change the maximum or final ACL amount in that order. Staff thinks that the draft order under consideration today more precisely interprets the Water Code on this issue than does the order against Mr. Mann. For the reasons just mentioned, staff does not recommend any changes to the draft order based on the comments received from either party. Adoption of the draft order would result in the State Water Board issuing a cease and desist order and imposing administrative civil liability against Stornetta. The order prohibits the continued and threatened unauthorized diversion and use of water and requires Stornetta to take one of two corrective actions within a specified time schedule. Their first option is to obtain a livestock stock pond registration, which would require reducing the reservoir's capacity to less than 10 acre-feet and installing an outlet pipe as near as practicable to the bottom of the reservoir. Their second option would be to render the dam incapable of impounding water. The administrative civil liability imposed upon Stornetta by the draft order is in the amount of $75,000. Of this amount, $30,000 would be due and payable immediately. The remaining $45,000 would be suspended in 2 steps pending Stornetta's compliance. $15,000 following Stornetta's submittal of a compliance plan consistent with the requirements of the cease and desist order, and the final $30,000 would be suspended indefinitely following complete and timely implementation of the compliance plan. To determine the amount of administrative civil liability appropriate in this case, the unique facts and relevant factors as described in the draft order were considered. Though not used to determine the amount of liability, both the amount and schedule are consistent with recently adopted board orders. Staff recommend adoption of the draft order as circulated. We are available to answer any questions.
Do we have any speakers? What do you know? Are there any questions or comments? Hearing Officer Moore, anything you want to add?
Could you expand a little bit on the rationale of the amounts that are linked to the planning and implementation, the amounts of fine money that would be reduced from the overall liability? Just a little more elaboration why those amounts were selected. I guess the leading question is, are they commensurate with the expected cost of those tasks that are outlined in the cease and desist order?
I don't know that they're exactly, this is Michael Buckman, the senior of the hearings unit. I'm not sure that I wouldn't say that they're linked to the costs of implementation. They're linked to the factors that the board and the hearing officer is considered when evaluating the unique facts of this particular case. So I wouldn't say that there's a direct link in between the values for each one of the steps as I would for the overall amount that was established for the particular facts of this particular case. In terms of the steps, I think there was general recognition that the plan should be a lower amount in terms of the liability suspended, just because the plan really shouldn't be necessarily a huge hurdle to come up with the compliance, the milestones that'll be taken and the time frames that will be taken. And that's why generally that amount is less than the final compliance plan amount for complete implementation. And I would say together, the reason why they were suspended in phases and the middle compliance plan is still contingent, that amount of $15,000 is still contingent upon final completion and implementation. So we didn't want to allow that amount to just be taken off the table once a compliance plan is submitted, because ultimately we are looking at whether that complete implementation occurs. So it's suspended temporarily and then would be completely suspended upon successful completion of the entire implementation of the compliance plan.
Good. I appreciate the explanation. So to then build on what you said earlier, could you, just for the purpose of, and letting my colleagues know, why, what were the factors that compose the fine then? Because it does, on its face, appear to the layperson as fairly punitive, a $75,000 liability. And we're not inhuman up here. We're thinking, what are the factors? Why is it so high? Lay out for the public, for my fellow board members, what composes this liability? We need more transparency.
I wouldn't say it's punitive. The board considered a number of factors that went into the calculation, and one of the major differences between what the prosecution team proposed and what the rationale in the draft order was that the board looked at a longer period of time for the violation. So the prosecution team only looked at the last 3 years, and that their proposed amount is based on the matters that are the facts that they find up until the point where the final ACL is issued. So it doesn't account for costs and resources and the deterrent factor that occur after a hearing is requested and the process that goes after hearing. And there's actually a large write-up in the North Coast Institute Flow Policy that's very clear that the board wanted to make sure that it's very strict in assessing certain amounts that go into the final liability. And if you gave me a minute, I could read some of those particulars that the board was very strict that they wanted to consider those factors. But in this particular case, the administrative civil liability considered the likelihood of injury to other water users and the unreasonable harm to aquatic life and endangered species. The many years over which the violation occurred, as I mentioned earlier, the lack of corrective action after being notified of the potential violation, the economic benefit of not complying, the importance of consistent administration of water rights within the state, and there's particular examples of each one of those. Like, for instance, the years water was diverted for storage since at least 2005, which is a long period of time. More than 2 years passed from Stornetto's receipt of the draft order until the first corrective action was taken, which was right before the hearing. They submitted a livestock stock pond registration. The property was repeatedly leased year-round for cattle grazing, and and in terms of what the board set for the 2015-0025 order, it's also consistent with that. So I'd say the order itself, the amount definitely considers all of those different factors that were unique to this particular enforcement action.
Yeah, and it's actually quite a bit below the maximum potential liability is another contextual statement. And another contextual statement, which you mentioned early in your presentation, was there were over 1,700 reservoirs reviewed, 350 reviewed more closely, 11 where enforcement was considered, and here we are down to one. After all these years, with many opportunities to resolve the issues brought forward by our agency in an attempt to collaborate and come to conclusion. And so ignoring, the water rights system, there has to be some kind of deterrent to that. Yeah. So it's a hard decision to come, or to have to grapple with. And recognizing, the letter that we received and the hardship this type of a process can be to people, and, especially given the circumstances of what's happened in the last few months, with the person representing this case passing away, a few months ago. So it's not that we don't listen or understand these factors, but there's an overall orderly administration of the water rights process for citizens of California that has to be upheld and has to have integrity.
I have some questions. So first of all, I appreciate some additional putting it into context and then pulling out some of the factors that were considered. I'm comfortable with the order, but I do have some questions and continue to be a little bit concerned about this financial hardship issue, and the details are just, it's very scant as far as what exactly are those hardship issues. So the concern that I have is this: the main thing is we need to see corrective action, and she has, the owner has committed to that, but it does seem that she doesn't exactly know what that corrective action is. In fact, in the letter, she indicates here that if the order means that the pond be drained, then I am requesting it be done in the simplest, most efficient, cost-effective way possible. So in light of the fact that there is not currently a plan, we don't have any information in the record as to what that would cost, and it appears that she doesn't know what that would cost. Is there some flexibility that that we would have in collecting that the amount, the $30,000, in the event that she presents some additional information as to financial hardship and cost? Because what I wouldn't want to see happen is she write a check for the $30,000 and she's not able to comply. I'd like to preferably see both of them happening at the same time. But just looking for some flexibility, not that I would want to state if there were to be a reduction, but just looking for flexibility for staff in the implementation of this order.
So Nicole Kinsey with the Office of Chief Counsel. I think I'm aware of two options. One would be to, in the order itself, to amend the language to clarify that the $30,000 wouldn't be due and payable immediately, but at some later date. The second option that I believe is available, and maybe Mr. Laufer can confirm, is that we can develop a payment plan. So even if the $30,000 is due and payable immediately, that our administrative side can come up with a payment plan after the fact to allow for that collection over a period of time. And I actually don't know off the top of my head which one of those would be preferable for our administration.
Yes, generally, because of the language of the Water Code, it is actually the second option that Ms. Kinsey has described, that the order requires essentially that the penalty be assessed and doable upon, assessed and payable upon adoption of the order. However, the board has been able to come up with, through on the administrative side, once the order is reduced to an amount, to come up with a reasonable payment schedule and forbear any kind of collection action associated with the penalty amount.
And you have that authority without any further changes to the order?
That's correct.
All right.
Right, so you can get the sense of the board to focus on getting the compliance done. Other questions? Comments? We need a motion, I guess. Unless, and yeah, if we don't have any other.
Is that right? Well, I propose we move adoption of the staff recommendation. I appreciate everyone's diligent work on this, and you know, I feel bad about the wild, or I will say that I understand the circumstances of the wildfires and being, you know, a factor here, and so I do want to encourage staff to consider issues that Board Member Diadamo brought up in terms of ability to pay, and yet being familiar with the details of the case, there is a solution out there. It is affordable, frankly, I believe, and so I encourage the parties to initiate action to solve this issue, which many others in the North Coast have taken initiative to solve. And with that, I move adoption.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, that carries. Thanks. I know there's a lot of work behind this relatively short presentation. We've read it all, discussed it, appreciate all the hard work. Comments? All right, item number 4, board member report. Who would like to start? One? Have?
I'll jump in.
Okay.
All right, so last week I attended, and Madam Chair, I'm sure you'll be talking about this, but the 10-year celebration of the Yuba Accord, and
yeah.
you did a really good job, along with other speakers. It was just great to be there in light of the fact that we're talking about really encouraging voluntary settlement agreements, and so just to hear a little bit more. I didn't participate in the development of the Yuba Accord, but just have heard the war stories through the years. So it was really great to hear a little bit more about the history and the benefits of the Accord. And Carla Nemeth also spoke about, you know, putting it into context with some of the things that we're really looking for today. I also attended the Center for Watershed Sciences. This was an anniversary week, their 20th anniversary celebration, and attended some meetings at Aqua.
Right, my report's like her report. I did those things.
What?
Yeah, it was really nice, actually. Anyone else?
So let's see. After our last board meeting, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission was kind enough to invite me on a tour to Hetch Hetchy. So we got to start in San Francisco. We went to the wastewater treatment plant there and followed the water backwards, if you will. Stopped at Moccasin, drove by some of they also have a smaller regional storage. Water storage area, a reservoir. That's what I'm trying to say. And then, but then we made our way
Big
up to
place with
water
Nothing,
keep.
yeah.
And then we went up to Moccasin.
A legal
and,
one with all the right permits.
Yeah, all the right permits.
Yeah.
No fishing in it. And so went up to Moccasin though, and then ended up in Hetch Hetchy, which was incredible. A very, very beautiful space.
Did you do the walk around?
I actually just sat and read that morning.
That's
I
perfect,
wanted to just kind of take in the space there. It's quite the system, all gravity fed. Very unique system certainly in the state. The following week, let's see, let me quickly pull this up. So I was in Exeter last Tuesday. Met with California Citrus Mutual. Eileen Sobek, our executive director, and I actually drove out to Exeter. It was nice. It was nice to spend the morning out there. Met with some growers, met with some board members from California Citrus Mutual. Got really in depth in the various breeds of different oranges that are out there. The Valencia, and there's now these sumo oranges, I guess, that they look horrible. They're very knobby and they're very ugly, but are supposed to have a very sweet and beautiful fruit. So anyway, it was nice to go and be able to see on the ground and have some discussions with the growers there about the irrigated lands program and a lot of the work. There was discussion about the SB 623 and the administration's proposal and how preferable that is and how they're really certainly in support of a comprehensive solution when it comes to providing drinking water for communities that have been impacted by nitrates in the groundwater. And then I later that week went to and participated in a Salton Sea Symposium in the Coachella Valley University of California Riverside. Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, University of California Riverside pulled together. It was really on the science, trying to focus really on the science, and so there was a lot of discussion about what air quality monitoring rather is showing insofar as the constituency of the dust down there. I mean, the asthma rates in the vicinity they're historic, and it's about trying to parse out, well, how much is being contributed by fugitive dust from the Salton Sea? How much is it from just other air quality issues, whether it's ag or just how dusty it is out there? The science is we need to do more of on the air side, but it did bring up as well then, how do we better fit our regulatory tools into the solutions down at the sea? And I know that the regional board currently is looking at whether it's warranted to look at basin plan amendments, how to better incorporate the irrigated lands program and sort of a watershed approach for the sea. So it was a good day. It was a good opportunity to continue to talk about an issue, of course, that's of great concern and focus to this board as well. So, yeah.
I was finally able to attend a regional board meeting. San Francisco Bay Regional Board meeting was last week.
Wear a name tag?
Yes, I think it was the first time I was able to attend like this entire year.
Did you fill out a card?
No, they've been very gracious and very patient with other duties of the board. But, and actually I was glad I was there for something that I think the vice chair will remember very fondly. They did a presentation on the South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project. In fact, actually, the regional board adopted and issued new WDRs to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as well as the Department of Fish and Wildlife for phase 2 of this project. And in doing so, the executive officer director for the project attended and did a great presentation, which really prompts me to now request a site visit on the success of that effort in converting, well, I think there's like 15,000 acres of former salt ponds that are being slowly converted into marshland habitats. And this phase 2 will add another 2,000 plus acres to the effort. And they had amazing success with performance measures and everything. So I'm glad to be there and glad to finally be able to reach back out to my regional water boards. And in fact, I just wanted to, in case, I'm sure board member Diadamo know already, but in case it's not on her radar screen, the Central Valley Regional Water Board will be meeting towards the end of the month. And one of the things on their calendar will be the CV salts proposal. So I will plan on attending that, finally, yes.
Well, thanks. That's great news. Very important long-range regional effort there. It also has an overlap with sea level rise adaptation as well as habitat and water quality and all kinds of things for the community of the Bay Area. I don't really have much to report. The last couple of weeks I have been coordinating with the chairs of the regional boards and going over potential topics for the annual meeting of Water Quality Coordinating Committee. And there are very many. We actually have 11 potential topic areas, and it's just way too many to take on because of the day and a half, the bandwidth that we all have. So we're making a diligent effort to whittle those issues down, and actually would invite you all to chime in because I won't recount them all, but they're all very important and topics that are timely. So then we're looking at maybe this year doing a breakout on coastal issues versus inland issues, just to be able to, drill down on some things that, the certain regions may have limited interest in. Also, given that several board members attend on behalf of each region, and for those that have both inland and coastal issues, maybe they could split up, that sort of thing. So, but that's probably, as far as the things that have been going on the last couple of weeks, some of the more intellectually challenging things I'm dealing with. whittling down that list. There also seem to be issues that are just, maybe we should touch on every year, whether it's climate adaptation mitigation efforts or disadvantaged community issues that arise in different flavors throughout the state. So, I'll share some of the discussions. We have a planning committee of volunteer chairs of three of them that will whittle down the input that we receive from the broader group. And toward the end of the month, we'll hopefully come to some decisions. So I'll circulate that information, within the bounds of our ability to communicate. So I appreciate your putting a little time into that. And with that, that's my report. Thanks.
For the flag, and thanks for covering that incredibly important sector, particularly with three of us sort of taking out a lot of the time. I can't thank you enough. I think you are. And so my things are all pretty much the same as Dee Dee's, but a lot that was uplifting and, all that is good about people actually trying to come together rather than the lowest common denominator. I mean, one of the things I found interesting about particularly Yuba Court, I actually did thank the organizers for that 2 hours of therapy, of being able to be in the space with people who were at each other's throats and called on their better angels to think of a better way. It's interesting in contrast to where we've already in a proposal offered to take in something like that, and a lot of people don't even see it, despite all the efforts. But that being said, it's hard to do if you're actually dealing with the details of what's going to work for everybody. So it was just nice to be in the space of folks who were celebrating that they were able to come together across the spectrum. And so, obviously Center for Watershed Health also doing a lot of great stuff, and some really good meetings and conversations at Aqua. So, staff did a really good job in the presentations they were at, both the ones I was at and ones I heard about. So, it's just challenging. And just also a reminder that we do have to keep working on relationship, because the forces that try to divide us are a lot stronger and pervasive as an overlap, and it takes work to do, as Board Member Dodak famously said at a meeting, building trust takes work. So it was a good shot in the arm to spend some good time with people versus just seeing what people are saying in the media. It was actually human and reaffirming and energizing. So that part's great.
No, I wish I had come.
It's a great hallway conversation, I have to say. All right, well then let's move on to the Executive Director's report, but we don't have the Executive Director with us today, but we have a very thorough report. This is one of the heavier ones. It's a heavy one. I weigh them before. Is there anything that you guys want to highlight? I didn't have anything that I needed to pursue with you at the
There's just one thing I wanted to mention, and that's you'll notice there's a new section to this month's report, and that's a consolidated report on our cannabis regulatory program. Recognizing of the cross-program nature of it, Eileen had the idea that we should sort of pull everything out rather than bury it or compartmentalize it. And so we've got that new report. If you've got any input, feel free to let me or Eileen or Jonathan know, and we'll sort of update it as we go.
That sounds good. We'll probably think about it. I can't remember what we directed in the cannabis rule, but think about when, I don't have an idea, opportune time to sort of give us an update at the board. It is, of course, the issue that probably, if I had to pick one issue other than Bay Delta, that comes up on all sides with people being either afraid or frustrated, whether they're a permittee or another water rights holder or another community member or, on the Eel River or wherever we are. So it is one of those things where both the enforcement load we're going to have is significant and everything. So whenever you all think, I don't know if we specified it, but think about when the right time would be to bring stuff together. I know it's early in the beginning, but it's one of those inquiring minds want to know. And the opportunity to use a board informational setting or an update as an informational platform for the things that are going on and the stuff that still needs to be worked on probably be helpful in sort of the body politic, but I'll leave it to you guys.
Yeah, we'll figure out the best timing for that.
great.
Yeah, that's clearly one of the issues that WQCC could potentially take on,
right,
which
sure.
is about the 1-year anniversary
Exactly.
of our regulatory action, and that might coincide with the, depending on the discussion, when a reasonable time for update to the board. I wanted to just comment on, I appreciated the Division of Drinking Water's summary information on the sanitary surveys that they perform and the partnership with the local oversight agencies where we have them in about half of the counties. So that was interesting information. And then, so that's the sanitary, I am the sanitary engineer on the board, right? And so the sanitary surveys are very important, and it looks like we've really met some good performance metrics in that area. But also, speaking of sanitary, I'm interested in the sanitary sewer overflow order updates. Technically, just something I have a lot of experience in, and interested in all the dimensions that are summarized on the high level, such as what lessons are learned, what program areas are not as important to put as much time into, and updates to how that system is structured, because that's, I believe, a really a guiding light program that stakeholders helped inform. It's putting it together in the early 2000s, and it's an important program for asset management for things that we don't see, manholes, underground pipes. It's a really a model program in a lot of ways to getting our heads around a rational approach to dealing with underground infrastructure and its regular update. Looking at the Golden Gate Bridge is the one that we can see, and everybody talks about painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You're never done. You start one end and you go to the end, and then you go back to the place you began, and you never stop maintaining. But you can see it, whereas our underground infrastructure gets forgotten about, and people don't get elected by bragging about how many pipes they've replaced. But it's so critical to our quality of life. So I think this is a groundbreaking program, set up asset management within our local agencies. We give them credit through our regulatory program for accomplishing it. And, I'd like to see it duplicated in the right touch on the stormwater infrastructure, the drainage and the green infrastructure, the wetlands of our state, and a similar mindset about asset management over time. So just thought I'd talk about that a little. You never thought sewers could be so inspirational. But
They're the most inspirational thing.
But the sewer workers are doing
After the
really
Eastern
important
Sierra.
work. That's
Eastern
right.
Sierras top them,
Well,
but
yeah,
otherwise nothing.
Hetch hetchy to pipes and pumps. All right, thanks.
Thanks for that, actually. I agree with you. All right. My understanding is we will not have a closed session today. Thought it'd be more productive as hearing officers for us to keep working with staff and teeing stuff up for you before having another one. And so with that, I believe the meeting is adjourned. Did I forget something? All right, good, thank you. Is it?
No, our gadget has the record.
Is it really?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.